Okay guys, so today we are going to be discussing voting, how to vote, how to register, and political parties. So what are political parties and how did they form? So this lovely gentleman right here is James Madison, and he was the original person who kind of came up with this idea of political parties. He initially had called them factions, and he was worried that they would divide our country and prevent democracy because instead of voting for a person's political politics, which are their own ideologies about politics, they would vote simply for one party because they didn't want the other party to win, which we'll go into later. That's called party polarization, what he worried about. So we're also going to talk about other parties outside of our main Democratic and Republican parties, which I will go into more detail in just a couple seconds. But there are also third parties. So when you think of third parties, you probably think immediately of independents. So those are people who are right down the middle. They believe in facts from the Democratic and Republican sides, and those formulate their opinions. Anyone who contributes to any kind of political agenda is known as a political machine. This can be through money, campaigns, flyers, anything that helps a politician to make it to office that you contribute makes you a political machine. And it's not just voting for, like, if you just vote for a candidate, that's not the same thing. It's actual, real, active contributions. The Green Party is my favorite third party. They focus more on the environment than the economy, which I think is absolutely amazing. Okay, two-party system. Democrats, Republicans. We've all seen this fun little image before. So Democrats are considered the left, or can also be called liberals. So these are people who support abortion rights, gay marriage, the legalization of marijuana, equality for all. We're part of the Black Lives Matter movement that we all are probably familiar with. And then the Republicans are those who do not want government to have nearly as much interference in their life as it does. So no interference in the economy, no interference with gun laws. They don't believe in abortion or gay marriage rights. These are often Christians, and it's often for religious reasons rather than political reasons that they don't support these, but those who are Republican are often Christian. It kind of just coincides. So let's talk about plurality and majority voting. So we have a system of plurality voting. So once you hit a certain amount, you're done. So like the first person to reach 276 votes in the Electoral College on election day wins the election, regardless of how many votes the other person has. This is also called first past the post. So it's the first person to reach a certain amount. And plurality voting is also used in the House and the Senate. So if there's a 2/3 majority on a bill, but the president tried to veto it, they can override it through the system of plurality voting. Majority voting is where you have to get more than 50% of the votes. So say there were 3 people running. So one person gets 20%, one person gets 60%, and the other person gets the last 20%. The person with 60% of the votes is going to win. Obviously, that makes sense. But say there was a person with 30%, a person with 40%, and then another person with 30%. So 60% of the votes did not go to the candidate with 40%, but they will still win the election. All right. The shape of modern political policies, shape of modern political parties. So this is Nancy Pelosi. She is the Speaker of the House, and she has a very important role because she's basically in charge of unifying everyone and presenting ideas and going over laws and assigning them to committees. This is also a role of the majority and minority whip and majority and minority leader. So the majority is the party that has the most representatives in the House or the Senate, and the minority is the party that has the least. So right now, Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat, and she is our Speaker of the House. Okay, divided government and partisan polarization. So divided government and partisan polarization kind of go hand in hand. I really like this little picture, just talking about how Democrats and Republicans are so divided. And partisan polarization, or party polarization, is basically when the parties will go completely against each other. So anything that this party wants, even if this party supports it, they are going to go against it because someone from the other party wants it. So it's just like blind voting. So it's basically like, oh, that candidate's Republican. I didn't do any research on them. I didn't look into them. but I'm going to vote for them because they're Republican. And this is kind of what James Madison feared, was that people would start absent-mindedly picking candidates based on their political affiliation rather than their actual ideas, philosophies, and policies. All right, voter registration. So let's talk about how to register to vote. So most places will have a voting registration office. So like I live in Coeur d'Alene, we have a voter registration office. It's on 4th, I believe, which is kind of on the way to downtown. I saw it the other day when I was driving. You go to these places, you register to vote, but there are some requirements in able to register to vote. That didn't really make sense. So you have to be over 18, obviously. You have to be a citizen in the US. You have to be considered able to vote. So if you have a mental disability or something that would deem you unfit to vote, you are also not allowed to register. All right, voter turnout. So what influences voter turnout? So the first thing is socioeconomic status. Those who make more money and are more educated are much more likely to actively participate in voting in elections. This goes hand in hand with race. So those who are minorities, honestly, sometimes, and this also goes with third parties, these people won't vote because they think that their voice doesn't matter because it is such a small percentage of the votes that are going towards this person. A third party candidate has never won the presidential election. And that's because there's simply not enough people to vote for them. Something else that affects voter turnout is the voting requirements. So what I was talking about, where you have to have lived in the US, you have to be a citizen of the United States. Another requirement is that you also have to be the citizen of the state you are voting in for a certain amount of time. And that varies from state to state. So some states it's 14 days, some states it's 30, some states it's 90. And some people also commonly will use the excuse like, I just don't have time. Which I mean might be true, but states have worked to counteract this. So Oregon, for example, automatically registers every person who is eligible to vote online. So you're automatically registered. People will also do like where they'll open up the voting. It's just called early voting, where they'll open it up like 2 weeks before and people can start voting so that they can't really use the I don't have time excuse because they have 2 full weeks to vote. There's also mail-in voting, which is really influential, and that was the majority of the votes in 2020 due to the coronavirus. Elections. So let's talk about all the stages of elections. So first, I have this cute little picture, which is just, I kind of saw it as like a campaign thing. So deciding to run is difficult enough on its own. So if you are running for president, you need to be 35 years old, and you have to have a clean record, all that, and every US president we've ever had has been college educated, but that's not technically a requirement. Technically, anyone over 35 who was born in the US and is eligible to run can run. For Senate, you have to be 30. For the House of Representatives, you have to be 25. So just to decide to run, you need so many signatures, you need so many people behind you, and that's why name recognition is so important. Because if nobody knows who you are, they're not going to vote for you. If they don't know what you stand for, they're not going to vote for you. So moving on to nomination stage. So this is kind of what I was talking about. So there's primaries, there's open and closed primaries. So this is where they'll put a lineup of all of the candidates who are available, and you will vote for the candidates that you think deserve to run. So the primaries are kind of confusing sometimes because there's a lot of candidates and some of them aren't really well known, and it just kind of makes it difficult to understand like what's going on with this person, what's happening with this. That's why a lot of states do closed primaries, so not everyone is allowed to go in, or sometimes they'll do like, oh, only those in the Democratic Party can vote for the Democratic candidates, those in the Republican Party can only vote for the Republican candidates, which is super beneficial. Convention season. So this is when you'll see like presidents or mayors or senators, they'll go to their states and to other states, and they will basically throw like big parties. Like you've probably seen a lot of pictures of Trump at Trump rallies and whatever Biden could do due to Rona, but where they'll go and they'll actually meet with their constituents, talk to them, give big speeches, and it's a lot of money and it's a lot of work, but it does greatly influence the public opinion on you specifically. So general elections and the presidential elections / election day. So general elections, these are elections for like senators and House of Representative members, just congressmen, Supreme Court judges, all of them. So every year, the Electoral College will come and meet for the president, and they'll collect their votes from their state, and they'll total them up, put them in a little box, basically. And whoever gets to the 276 first wins the presidential election. So the people from the Electoral College all come together, they all get their votes checked, they all put them in, and they're reviewed, and the president then will go into office in January. I believe it's January 11th when they go in. All right, campaigns and voting. So primary campaigns and general campaigns. So primary campaigns are mostly about name recognition. This is how you're going to get your name on the map. And general campaigns are when people already know you. You're going around, like I said, kind of throwing the rallies, the parties, all of that stuff. Very important. Voter decision making. So voter decision making kind of goes along with voter turnout. So it's going to be determined by socioeconomic status, race, gender, education levels, very similar to the people who are going to vote in the first place. So this can kind of lead to gerrymandering when this gets a little chaotic. It's kind of unrelated to this, but it was in this section. So gerrymandering is when they redraw congressional districts so that all of the Republicans or all of the Democrats are grouped together so that they can get all the votes from one congressional district. It's usually to represent a specific political party. So it's really obvious when gerrymandering has occurred because you'll get like these crazy shapes in the middle of states and they'll like loop around other things, and it's just kind of ridiculous, and it is very detrimental to democracy. All right, and finally, we're going to talk about direct democracy and how people can actually directly participate in American politics. So the first one is a referendum, which is when you can basically vote yes or no to a bill or proposal. So the citizens vote yes or no, yes, I don't like this, no, I don't. And then that also kind of goes along with recalls. So recalls are when you can basically take an elected official out of office. So that would be like if people were to file a claim against our president and say, oh, well, he should be removed from office because of this, this, and this, and then they impeach him. And we can also take initiatives, so we can propose a law, but it is extremely difficult for these laws to get passed because not only does it require a ton of signatures, they're usually not simple decisions, it's very confusing, it's just really, really difficult to get a bill, law, or really anything to pass through direct democracy, but we try. Thank you.